I'm going to look on the other side. And Judge Holmes and Ms. Burrows, if you will help me look for, I see Mr. Bose. Donna Guthrie should be coming on as well. Hello. Let me give Ms. Guthrie a text and see if she was able to get, she's struggling to get on. Okay, we are going to get started. Ms. Guthrie will join us. She said in a few minutes, but in the meantime, we want to be good stewards of everyone's time. My name is Marcia Ellison, and I have the privilege of serving as the president of the NAACP Fort Lauderdale Broward branch. We are a nonpartisan entity. We do not endorse candidates. We do, however, help our citizens get information about the candidates so that they can make an educated decision when they go to the polls. We are certainly working to make sure that all of our folk vote the down ballot. Don't just vote for the top of the ballot. You know, all politics is local, and so we want folk to know about the people who are making the decisions in their own communities. Nothing is more important, we believe. And so with that, we are going to now open up with a prayer. We'll hear from Minister Bridget Edwards, who is our Religious Affairs Chair, and I think she's Associate Pastor at none other than New Hope Baptist Church, Sistrunk. Minister.
Good evening, Madam President, and to all assembled. Let us go to the throne of grace. Most gracious, eternal God and Father, we give thanks to you for yet another day. God, we thank you for this opportunity for us to share information and hear from our candidates as they seek to serve your people. God, we pray now that your spirit would be in our midst, that you, O Lord, would open our ears to hear, open our minds to think, open our hearts, oh God, that we might receive, and help us today to make an informed decision as to who we should vote for. We ask it all in Christ Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And so what we were going to do this evening is we are going to open up, have the candidates open with a 2-minute self-introduction. We have questions, and if there's someone from the audience who has a question, please put it in Q&A, not in the chat. That's Q&A, it's open, put that in, and some of our co-hosts will be monitoring that. And please, if you're going to ask questions, make sure it is questions that pertain to the city of Fort Lauderdale, not the federal or the county or the school boards particularly. But let's try to let's make the main thing the main thing. We will start in alphabetical order with Mrs. DuBose.
Good evening. Thank you all for having this forum. Good evening, Madam President. I first like to say that I'm a life member of the NAACP, as is my entire family, life members of the NAACP, and we know that membership is important for our community. Just wanted to reintroduce myself to those of you who don't know me. I am an advocate of this community, daughter of the community, and long before I filed my paperwork, I have been a servant leader for this community. although I'm not using my degree in English, I am working in health and human services, helping foster children get adopted. And during my tenure as a C-suite executive, executive director of this local nonprofit, I have helped with more than 500 adoptions from foster care here locally. Having worked with those families, the faith community, stakeholders, I understand the importance of advocacy. And so many families who have been touched by foster care were also touched by domestic violence or drug abuse. All of these things are related. And so in my work and in my touching these families, I've learned that a rising tide lifts all the boats. And it's important that our community that has been neglected and blighted for decades is uplifted. It's important that everything about us. That includes development, that includes housing, fair housing, that includes job and economic growth for our community. And I want all those things for our community. And I ask for your support on November 8th to vote for Yvette Dubose for District 3 City Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Hankerson.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nadine Hankerson, and I have been a part of this community for 63 years. I am overwhelmed by the idea that this seat has never been held by a woman since its inception as a city. And for an African-American woman to finally have this seat, I feel like it needs to be someone in that seat who has capacity. And when I say have capacity, who really understands public policy and who really understands the need of the greater good. This seat has been held in the past, and where we need to be and where we should be going has not happened for us. What has happened for us is land use. It's one of the most important issues that I'm bringing to the table, is because where there is no land, there is no village. And this village in District 3 has been carved up, diced up. Everybody want to make consensus. I'm not here for consensus. I'm here for some bergamot, royal crown. Let's get some straightening. That's what we need to have sitting at that seat come November. We have properties that's been taken out of our community. Nobody is standing up, or very limited people are standing up. And what we need to do is begin taking a look at the real models that are being designed for us here in our community with District 3. So as far as the background is concerned, I come well capable in the capacity of it. I have too many degrees, just too many. But what I can say to you is they come with a tool of understanding and a tool of knowing how to read it and move forward and making a difference in the lives of the people who are a part of District 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we will move on to our first question, which is, share with us, if you would, your vision of District 3. Dr. Hankerson, you that's a perfect lead off to, if you're elected, what is your vision for District 3? 2 minutes, ma'am.
My vision is to begin taking a look at the real issues that needs to be discussed in District 3. And one of the real issues is the elephant at the table, which is racist behavior that has taken place in the community. And those kinds of discussions need to be brought to the table, and I'm well capable of doing that as one that has a PhD in conflict analysis and resolution. The second ordeal that needs to be taking place is that we need to really discuss affordable housing and take a look at why we don't have it, and take a look at the models that are before us. Poor people with the models that are before us cannot happen without the removal of the Fair Cloth Amendment. We need to take a look at community predators. We need to take a look at poverty pimps. We need to take a look at environmental justice issues especially when it deals with Doers and Wingate. Nobody really got the final understanding of what's going on with that in community. So those are my visions to begin taking a real good look at some of the issues that needs to be discussed so that we can have access to economic, real money talk at the table. And as an economist and as a econometrician, I'm well capable of doing that for this community.
I can go ahead and go.
Thank you. Mrs. DeBose, same question.
Yes, thank you. There are so many issues, and some of those that Dr. Hankerson touched on. Obviously, affordable housing is something that we're talking about across our nation, not just District 3. Public safety is a big concern. There is a direct tie to the economy and public safety, crime. And so I want to work on that with our community policing plan. I also want to diversify our economy. We have a lot of unemployed and underemployed people in District 3. And the average income in Broward is about $64,000, and the average in our district is $20,000 less average. And that doesn't account for what it costs to pay rent. It doesn't account for car note. It doesn't account for gas and for food. So we have to find ways to increase and diversify our income for our residents, and also provide opportunities for those people who don't go to college. You don't have to go to college to be successful. And there are 3 big industries right here in South Florida. One of them is the marine industry that are looking for local people that you can make a great livable wage, beyond a livable wage, buy a house, take your family on vacation. We need more opportunities for economic growth in our community so people can become homeowners and pass on wealth to the next generation. I think we also need to look at programs like the SAFE program to help seniors that are in their homes but can't afford repairs to their homes. In addition to those who are renters in District 3, working with landlords to help with the tenant bill of rights, because so many people are getting rate hikes and they're not getting an increase in their pay. And how can we make that easier for them to remain in the district, in addition to helping with projects to improve our neighborhoods, our communities, our property values. And my job as an advocate is to amplify voices. I think it's important. Like I said before, everything about us should include us. So we need to amplify the voices that aren't being heard in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question. And so we all know that the CRA will sunset in 2025. So what is your vision for the remaining few years of the CRA? And we will start with Mrs. DeBose.
Taking myself off mute. Thank you for that. I think it's very important to note that for so many people who don't realize that it is an expiration date on that. And so from what I am in meeting with some people who work at the city and who work on the CRA and have worked on the CRA, some of the projects that have been slated may be fast tracked to that extent. But the funding comes obviously from the tax increment, property tax increment. And there has been a rise in since COVID, a rise in those projects that fall under the CRA. There are so many that are slated. My priority would be to see if we can fast track and then fold in stakeholders to make sure that there's a continuum. I think the goal currently, the discussion, the framework is that they're going to have it become an enterprise and have local stakeholders buy into that with the enterprise to continue the projects so that it doesn't just stop and it's a period, that it's a continuum. So those that are already slated, I would want to see come to fruition, and then look at data and trends to forecast long-term planning for the community.
Thank you. Dr. Hankerson, same question.
I would like to see a great portion of that money going into the Elks. The Black Elks of Broward County has been robbed of its heritage in this community. It has been here since 1926. And in 1946, that land was purchased by the Elks. And it's been taken from us illegally, and money should be given, whatever remaining money should be used to repair it and bring it back to return back to its rightful owners, as well as money being invested. Out of a lot of the money that's been given out of the CRA, the Elks didn't receive a dime. The Elks, for 76 years on that property, paid taxes, and it was a not-for-profit organization. And it has had history there that from at least 3 presidents has gone through there. We don't know the number. There are quite a few political officials that's been through there. We also have the mutual aid societies. When Black people couldn't even bury their own, they would go to the Elks, and that's where it was provided for. So it has been our signature grant, and it's been taken from us. It was an economic engine that should be invested in, and it should be put there so that people in the community, our history, our understanding of its legacy should be restored. And so where that economic engine is not necessarily on just Sistrum. The economic engine was Fifth Avenue, Second Avenue, all along those areas. So the economic base of a community was taken during the earlier years of Carlton Moore's administration, and later during Bobby DuBose, and kind of finished off with Robert. So I'm saying is that at the top of the table, those issues need to be discussed and brought to the table, and money be invested in it so that it can be returned and restored and give it its glory that it deserves.
Thank you, Doc. Let's go back here. So we know that there have been 3 commissioners, not just the current one, that since the inception of the CRA. So tell me, if you were the commissioner, then what would you have done differently had you been in that seat at the particular time? We'll start with you, Dr. Hankerson.
Repeat the question.
So we know that there have been 3 commissioners since the Northwest CRA was created. If you had been, I know you know a lot about the CRA and the different projects that some got funded, some didn't. What would you have done or done differently? And there were some different projects in addition to the Elks that you would have looked at. You talked about history being robbed. What would you have done differently as the representative for District 3?
Well, first I would have addressed the initial document that was the Northwest District, and the money that was promised, not under loans, but money that were grant related to some of the old historical establishment. For instance, Mr. Cohn's building, there is history that's there. Mr. Cohn's building, Junior Cohn and the rest of them have kind of walked away from it because the money that was presented to them was not necessarily there. Some of the other monies that should have been provided to restore some of the old buildings that was there should have been provided, and not the city land banking the money. So I would have addressed some of those issues, and I would have been moving towards lawsuits, because that's what needs to happen on behalf of a lot of things that has happened in our community with the 163 plan. That 163 plan needs to have a lawsuit attached to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. DuBose.
Thank you. I think the process could be more transparent. I do echo some of the sentiments of Dr. Hankerson. I think preserving the historic area would have been wonderful for the culture enrichment. I do also think that there's a current feeling now that development is just fast-tracked through the commission, and that it's bought and paid for. And I think when you open up the process and you advocate for people who don't agree with you, because some of the projects that the CRA has done have honestly divided the community. And that's not the goal. The goal is to uplift the community. The goal is to remove the stain of blight. The goal is to remove the stain of neglect. And so how do we do that? You have to coalesce. You have to survey the neighbors to say, what is it you envision? Because me telling you my vision is not necessarily the vision of District 3. It's very important that we have the stakeholders who are our neighbors, who are the voters, who sign on and say, yes, this is what we'd like to see. Of the slated projects, this is the budget, that line item that we have available. What is your vision? Rather than saying, this is what we're doing and this is how we're going to do it and you're going to love it. That's kind of the perception that we have now. And in order to combat that, you have to include the entire community. You could have someone, you can be loud and wrong, someone who's out front saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. That may not be what the community wants. So it's very important that you survey the community. It's very important that you engage the entire community, even those who may be speaking out against what you think is best for the community. Once you have a coalition, we're stronger in numbers than we are divided. Then you move forward. What do we have the money for? What is the forgivable loan? What will be the investment? And then you can move forward.
Thank you. 1 second. Ms. Burrows, I sent you Ms. Guthrie's contact. She's having trouble getting on. So if you will reach out to her and help her get on, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Will do.
Thank you. I sent a text. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. And so, what are your thoughts and or concerns about the new entity that has been set up to basically replace the CRA once it sunsets in 2025? I think it's called something like an EDC or something like that. We'll start with Mrs. DeVos.
So I touched on that briefly, that it's more, the thought is that it will be an enterprise, much like corporate America, where you have investors and stakeholders and potential for matching dollars. My concern is because unfortunately we have a history of inequities in our infrastructure, in our procurement process. We have a history of inequities in the building process. I reserve the right to review the information and make sure that it's transparent and fair. Because of the history of blight, we're playing catch up. So it's not that, ooh, we get this is what we're owed and more to catch us up, because some districts have not had equity, which is a completely different conversation than equality. And that's what we're talking about in our district. And our district is beyond CIS-Trunk. We're forgetting about areas beyond CIS-Trunk, because a lot of time when I speak to people outside the district, they only reference CIS-Trunk, which is a wonderful boulevard, but we still have Melrose, we now have Riverland, we have Dillard, we have Lake Air, we have so many communities, Rock Island, and all of the communities deserve heightened awareness. And all the communities, like for instance, there's a project for improvement in Lake Lauderdale Manors that's 4 years, was approved, 4 years, nothing has been done yet. When I was looking at projects that have been slated that haven't been done, there's 322 for District 3. Why is that? So I want more transparency. I want to know why it hasn't happened. What's the intent to get it happen? What is the calendar, and what is the cost analysis associated with it? So I reserve lots of questions. I have more questions than I do have answers about this new enterprise that will take over for the CRA.
Thank you. Dr. Hankerson.
I would say it's going to be the same thing it's been in the past. And one of the reasons why these types of enterprises can be formed is because the voices that needs to speak out, other than just lip service, needs something different. And that requires a community to stand up and say is that we're not going to tolerate it anymore. Too often, these programs are put together and then the money gets diverted to do whatever they choose to want to do with it without us having any say in it. And a large part of that goes back to the voter fatigue and apathy in the community. It's because when a candidate can win a seat for 1,350 votes, and that was Baltimore, back almost close to 30 years now. So let me just say that seat in 40 years has not been won with more than 1,350. And that has been the candidate. The last race with Mrs. Guthrie and Robert McKenzie was 1,200 and something, and I think she had approximately 800. So the maximum in over 40 years, this seat has only gotten 2,000 people to show up in a district that has close to 40,000 people in it. So what happens is that they only, or when we get those seats and we sit in them, we don't really listen to other than the folks who come out and vote for us. And that's a limited number. And that is what I just quoted to you is a part of statistics for Fort Lauderdale. So until in District 3, we can convince our people to understand the importance of the participation and what participation does and the voices that needs to be said about all of these enterprises that get put together. And all of these models that get built on public and private entities have to be reviewed in detail and find out what's the variable for the Negro.
Thank you. And so going back to Baltimore, the numbers they've always been low. What can we do differently to encourage people, to enlighten people? Do you think having this, because in those races happen, those elections happen were like February, March. You think we'll be able to increase the number of voters in District 3, being that it's on a ballot with the, with the governor and others? Dr. Hankerson.
Marsha, I'm just really not sure, because that's one of the things that I have just been going over and over in my mind. I'm looking at, you can't continue to keep doing the same thing and expect a different outcome. I don't see the purpose of signs. Why? We've been putting out signs for 40 years. We can't get past 2,000. We've been, feeding folks. We have been knocking on doors. I mean, there is just something that we really have to begin thinking on how our people begin to trust us, to understand that the decisions that we make, that we follow through with them. Oftentimes, we understand it's a number game. So if you got one vote, we might need to rethink single member districts. Is it working for us? I don't know. At this point, in my 60 years, I don't see it working. So I'm not saying it needs to change overnight, but we need to really begin looking at how do we begin to get our people to be participatory, other than they have to be shot or, they have to go to jail or something for them to step out and say, this is a civic responsibility and our livelihoods depend on making sure that we exercise our right to vote. So I'm looking to sit with any panel, a team of people who are willing to want to begin. First of all, we need to start collecting data in our own community. We don't collect our own data. And that's a big part of it, is because sometimes we're just blowing off the wind on what somebody else tells us. Because when you look at the per capita income based on Alice, for somebody to tell you that you are asset limited and that you are employed, that gets real deep. So we got to begin to take a real look at some of these numbers and have our own database and begin looking and massaging that data and making sure that we come up with the right variables so that we know what we are expecting in terms of some level of outcome.
Thank you. Mrs. DuBose.
Thank you. I do think that there is a lack of feeling like your vote matters. Outside of apathy, I've spoken to a lot of voters who feel like, and I'm on the Get Out the Vote Broward team. I am on Tri-County Black Voters. And one of the things, a lot of voters just don't feel like my vote doesn't matter. This still happened. So I think making it relatable. I tell a lot of people when I'm mentoring, I tell a lot of young people who I work with in the system of care, pick one issue, make that your issue, find out who's working on that issue, and then we coalesce. And I'm fortunate to have some grassroots community groups working with me and having endorsed me. And what we're finding is people don't feel like their vote is matters. And right now, people are galvanized. Women are galvanized for reproductive rights, and some other marginalized groups are galvanized, and they're going to get out the vote for November. But we have to make sure we bring the issue to the community. We have to remember our blueprint. The Black church was the blueprint for our community and continues to be. I think we have to go back to our plan that we used when we were first coming out of the civil rights movement, how we galvanize the entire community, because it can't just be in response to, like Dr. Hinkus said, a hashtag, and we're all upset. It has to be planning and projection. And I'm telling people now that I'm speaking to, our democracy is on the ballot. Our race is nonpartisan, but this county is mainly blue, but democracy is on the ballot. Don't think that it's not. And local politics impacts your life, I think, in a more ready way than it does federally. So if you don't get out and vote, we're slowly seeing our local powers being stripped away by Tallahassee. The same thing is happening in Washington, D.C., where you don't have a say over how you live your life, your body. So it's important that we galvanize our community, get back to our blueprint.
Thank you. So let's talk about some local issues. I'd like to hear what are several of our members live over and near what's called the Rock Pit Lake. And so there are concerns about future development of Rock Pit Lake by the members that were there. I've gone to a number of homeowners association meetings who said that they heard that something was happening, that they were going to fill in the lake, that they were going to build something along those lines, but they've not been involved in the decision. They're unclear as to the environmental justice issues and how it's going to affect their communities. So I'd like to know, should you become elected, what are your concerns, and what will you do to address the issue? And then do you agree that it's time for that to possibly be developed? We'll start with Mrs. DuBose.
I have heard rumors also that it's going to be a production or movie theater or production theater. Heard lots.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, not that one. The Rock Pit.
The Rock Pit. Okay. That's another instance of environmental injustice, which unfortunately is a heritage that we've inherited. I always want to see the environmental health impact, not just the social and mental health impact, where something is put in our community and then we're left for generations cleaning up the mess, as it were. I don't know if I'm in agreement with developing if unearthing it causes more impact and health issues, because that is a cancer cluster based on research. That is a cancer cluster. I have relatives that live over there, and almost everyone has been impacted within a household by cancer. So you can't tell me that it's not a direct link, whether it's said that it is or not. I think it's very important that we call out the injustices and inequity, and this is an instance of environmental injustice. I would want to know the environmental impact, not just the soil readings, go further and look at the water, because I don't think it's safe at this point, based on what I've received from environmentalists, that it's safe at this point to develop it.
Thank you. Dr. Hankerson?
Here's what I can say is that first, we need some real data. I haven't had the opportunity to see any of it, nor any discussion. So to really speak about it, I can only just render what I would know about working with environmental works, because I also did a master's thesis on demand for energy in minority households at Argonne National Laboratories. And at Argonne National Laboratories, we studied environmental injustices within these, poor to near poor neighborhoods. And what I can say is without good data, good decisions, and the data being broken down at a level that our community can truly understand, and having a community that is going to stand up and say, make sure it's clean. We want to be able to have those stamp seal of approval, because what happens is they clean up the land and then they come back and they build on it, and it's usually not for us. So my thing is that I am not for any land being built on in our community without having the proper data to truly support it, and having a data that is going to come from people who are not bought and sold by downtown money.
Thank you. And let me just share with each of you. We did have a conversation, myself and other members of the community, and with Jared Moskowitz, who came to a joint homeowners association meeting to share that that perhaps the due diligence was not done by the city commissioner, because the one thing everybody agrees is that rock pit is there is contamination there. As far as the data, the community has not been presented any. The entity that reached the tentative agreement submitted an application to develop that property, but it did not meet the requirements of the county. So I guess the city was good, but the county was not, because it did not show the goodwill or the funding needed to make sure that it was going to be okay, tested properly. And Moskowitz says that in November, the results from testing, they were going to test fish that are in that lake for different contaminants, whether it be mercury or whatever the contaminants are. They can tell from the flesh and the bones of the fish that that they pulled out of the lake to test. Once that comes back, he's pretty clear that the company will then correct the application, resubmit it to the county, and then it'll be out of their hands. And so then they won't have an opportunity, that won't be a stopgap for them. So then it'll be a matter of both your city commissioner, your jobs, whomever is successful, and the county commissioner to look out for the people of that community. That is the data has not been delivered, absolutely not. And so now we have been joined. She had a little trouble getting on. Ms. Guthrie, we will give you a 2-minute self-introduction, and then we'll move on to the next question. And any of you who have questions who are in the audience, please put it in the Q&A. Questions in the Q&A for the candidates. Just make sure that it pertains to City of Fort Lauderdale. Don't know if you had more light. We could barely see you there, Ms. Guthrie, but you have 2 minutes. Go right ahead. You're muted. You are muted.
Okay,
Okay.
now, okay. Thank you for
All right.
inviting me to the webinar. I'm Donna Guthrie, candidate for Fort Lauderdale Commission, District 3. I am a resident of Melrose Park. I've been here for almost 30 years. I'm the president of the Melrose Park Homeowners Association, the largest homeowner association, largest community in the district. And we also have RO 36, which is one of our precincts in the district. I've been on the board of several boards in Fort Lauderdale. I've been on the Sustainability Board, Parks and Recs. I currently serve on the Chiefs focus group, and I also serve on the board of the Success Center down here on 31st. And I hope that everyone comes out and vote on the 8th of November. And one of these wonderful ladies will be your next commissioner.
All right. Thank you. Okay. And so, Judge Holmes is asking if you have a little more light. They're having trouble seeing you. Okay. And so, And since we're talking about contaminated properties and development, let's go on to what are your thoughts on the new project that's on the movie theater? Um, that is certainly the topic of discussion, um, and any concerns that you may have, understanding that it's been a long time since it's been capped. But what are your thoughts or your concerns about this movie theater that's going to be built on 31st? We will start with Dr. Hankerson.
My concerns is that they are moving ahead with it without Black representation at the table. I was at a cultural advisory council meeting, and the commissioner pretty much brought it to the table as if it were a done deal. So I'm not quite sure of all of the parameters that go along with it at this point. But what I can say to you is that if I'm elected, I am one who would definitely want to be able to know the nuts and bolts, especially when we're talking about opportunities of working, because a lot of these things are jobs that they are going to give. For most poor people, it's at the bottom of the ladder. And so what we have to make sure at this point is to make sure that there are going to be livelihood jobs that are going to be available. Not that people are just going to be going to work, but if it's going to be skill-based, then we need to understand where that skill base is going to be so that we begin training our people so that whenever this facility is done, that we have jobs that is going to provide livelihoods for them and not just these menial jobs that they are going to be continuously be a part of an Alice report, that there are not going to be enough income involved, because a lot of this development that we are doing, the people can't afford, based on their disposable income, afford to do any of that. So we are building all of this retail and all of these other things. Is that who pays for that? While the private lenders may pay for it, but who gets the enjoyment out of it? It's not our community. And if you look around on Federal Highway and the rest of them, all of that just looks pretty. They put nice signs to cover it up. Nobody's in them. They're empty. So the model that we use for this mixed use and retail, somebody needs to go study some economics, because it's not working. There has to be income at the table.
Thank you. Mrs. DeBose, same question.
And you're referencing the movie studio at the Wingate site. Okay. Mm-hmm. In addition to the environmental impact and the studies and the analysis and not having seen the data on if it's safe, the other concern is that it didn't go through the due process that it would have normally had it gone before an advisory board in urban planning. It was a fast track project. And that lends itself to people in the community feeling like this current commission in some form is already bought and paid for, and that the developers can get anything done in fast track. I think it's very important that there's a process of transparency when it comes to procurement, when it comes to the budget, when it comes to hiring. I think it has to be a transparent process. And this is one of the instances that it was fast tracked through and didn't go through the proper channels, in my opinion, to go through that process where you can peel back all the layers and be transparent and share with the community, and also the community advisory board and staff, urban planning, before it got to the commission, and it skipped a couple of steps. So I have concerns about that in addition to the environmental impact.
Thank you. And Mrs. Guthrie.
I am always concerned when a project is fast-tracked in our community, because it lacks, like Yvette says, transparency. So it was fast-tracked. We don't know the full capacity of if the site is really sustainable for workers, for people to be there. We don't know. We haven't seen that this site is totally toxin-free. And as a cancer survivor myself, that's very, very important to me, so that we don't have all these crazy toxins within our community, because everyone knows that, when there's something disposable or something that's not up to par, it gets dumped into District 3 or into the Black community. So we have to be careful of that. Um, Another thing is when we put these projects into our communities, we have to have some safeguards to make sure that some of the work, not the menial work, the money work, the work that brings in all the money, the developer, the engineer, the planner, we have to make sure that some of those work goes to people within our community. Often it seems as if, they hire outside sources to think that we don't have the labor in our community, but we do. They're just not looking for it, or they don't want to fund us, or they don't want to be, keep us at the table and be inclusive to let us know. We need to, as a community, demand that the commission and the developers or whoever are building projects within our community come to us first, speak to us first, let us know what they're bringing in as a nature president. That's what we always say. If someone is coming into our area, we want to know what they're building, why, how the money's going to be spent, how is it going to help us? Because you can't constantly come into us, take from us, and then leave.
Thank you. Okay, and so on that note, the forensic lab / morgue, we had a discussion again with the current commissioner, Jared Moskowitz, and contrary to what was communicated by staff and the sheriff, it is not a done deal that is going to come. We had requested the minutes from the meeting where it was approved for that site, and we didn't get them. We assumed that they were not willing to give and needed to take another step. However, the county commissioner asked for them, and he didn't get them either. He didn't get them because they didn't exist, meaning they've not voted on the actual site. And his warning, if you will, to the residents was to find out where each of the candidates for county commissioner stood, because he put the brakes on it, but come November 8th, when he's out of there, he feels like the staff will begin to push it, and it'll all be up to your county commissioner. So my question to you is, what are your concerns, if you have any, regarding the forensic lab / morgue coming into the community? And what obviously many members of the community have said that they don't want it, and others say they were not contacted or asked about their opinion. So first of all, what are your concerns about the project coming into the community? And what are your concerns about the community and their thoughts? And then finally, will you do whatever you can, that if it is desired, to stop it, to make sure that happens? And we will start with Ms. Guthrie.
So my thoughts on this is, if the community doesn't want a forensic lab in their community, that's a no-brainer. It's a no, because they live there. The commissioners, the business people, the developers, they don't live there. Commissioners are elected to serve the people that elect them. So if the people that own property, that live there, that are the stewards of that community, say no, then it's a no. I don't see why it's a back and forth, because people just don't want it. Why spend money on it when you don't want it? In Melrose, we didn't want lights. The current commissioner tried to push lights in here. We said no, and we stood up to them. I attended the meetings, we challenged them, and we didn't get lights because most of the people didn't want lights, or didn't want the type of lights that they were coming in, they wanted to bring into Melrose. So as community leaders, we need to challenge the elected officials to listen to us and to do what we demand, because we're the ones that elect them. You cannot just say someone is paying you, or you have to listen to the people that vote you in. Everybody has to. You cannot, my stance on this is, if they don't want it, I have the same thing over here. There's things that we don't want that the powers that be try to push on us. You just need to push back. So my stance, if they don't want it, I wouldn't want it. And we would, when I'm elected, I would work with the neighborhood to make sure that their wishes are what is there too.
Thank you. Dr. Hankerson.
I live in that community. As a matter of fact, right down the street from where they want to put it. And I am going to be fighting it with nail and tooth. I feel as if this community, and when I say this community, Lake Air has taken a lot of hit in terms of environmental contamination, starting with Wingate, starting with Stupid Lake. And as a matter of fact, that land once upon a time, when they got ready to close down Wingate, was slated for Lee Dump. So I guess if you put French on it, it makes it sound better. So I'm just saying is that that land has always been geared towards wanting to put something there that does not have a good environmental balance to it. So as far as I'm concerned, I will be fighting it nail and tooth with or without being in this seat.
Thank you. And Mrs. DeBose.
Thank you. I was one of the residents at the protests, at several protests that we had out on the street holding signs. We don't want the morgue in our community. Again, this is another instance of environmental injustice and the policies of inequity as it pertains to our community. I do also think that it needs to be put in a industrial zone area, not in a residential area. I don't know what community would want that in their backyard. In addition to the trauma of a morgue by an elementary school, I think I'm not satisfied as it pertains to data with the environmental impact, the off-gassing, cremation, all the things that happen at a morgue science lab. Great that it's creating jobs. We just don't want an industrial building in our community. It needs to go into industrial zoned area and not in a residential area. So I commit to working to peeling back the layers, being transparent, making sure the community is aware. It's my understanding that in December there will be some movement. So we're on pause. We haven't reached that hurdle yet, but it's very important. As we did an all call before and had all the communities and the HOA presidents aware of what was happening and to meet us with their signs in the morgue to talk about our unrest. We have to be on guard, go back to our blueprint and galvanize our community because we don't want it.
Thank you. When we had the conversation with the county commissioner at the time, he said that he had spoken to gone to a number of homeowner association meetings, that he that held special meetings, but I think the majority of the people are nil, said that they had no idea. And I have family that live over there and they didn't get that memo, and they do attend the homeowner association meeting. So how will you reach out to your residents to find out if what their thoughts are on different projects, and what they really want to see in their neighborhood as you go along? And we will start. Let's go with Mrs. DeBose.
Thank you for that. Most of my residents in our communities are working individuals. And so they can't come to City Hall. So we have to bring City Hall to them. I think it's very important to attend the HOA meetings. I think it's very important to have a town hall in the community and not just at City Hall. I think it's very important to send out newsletters. I think it's very important to interface with community leaders who can also help get the word out about what's important, what's coming up, what we need to pay attention to, and what we need to pack City Hall and show up in numbers for. So many times we're reacting and not proactively planning. And that's one of the challenges we have with having our voices heard. And as an advocate, that's one of the challenges is the call to action. So I am accustomed to going out into the community and speaking and meeting the community where they are. So I would continue that, taking City Hall to the community and use the various mediums that way to interface with my neighbors, to talk with the community. I live, work, and play here. My business is here. I'm raising my children here. I go to church here. I walk to the store, hard to miss with my big afro. So I'm going to continue to advocate and to educate and to inform my community.
Thank you. Dr. Hankerson.
It's about meeting people where you find them. And our community, there are a lot of places where they are, and we have to meet them there. They probably all won't show up at City Hall, some will, but we have to make sure that we are able to afford the kind of media and spend money on new levels of technology in reaching our people, because we can reach them when there's a concert. We can reach them when there's things that they are or want to be interested in. And so we have to use some of those tools in our toolbox to maybe run commercials, maybe run this internet game. And for some of those who are of age now, where we're going to have to pick up the telephone and reach them and call them. And so it is about having those relationships in communities and trying to reestablish some of those, because we just don't have it. Most of us today don't really even know our neighbors. So it is about, how do we begin looking at 21st century communications and reaching the hearts and minds of people so that they will want to participate, because it goes right back to the level of participation. We have got to get people to participate in order to have a voice in this process.
Thank you. Ms. Guthrie.
Well, where I sit, I chair a homeowners association, so I have various ways of reaching out to folks. We're in an information technology age. We could text people, send out emails. We use all the social media, that we have at our disposal, and we go out into the community. There's various ways that we can interface with the community and to let them know what's going on. Now, the problem is, a lot of times when we interface with the same community and we ask them to show up, they don't. So it's a two-way street. We're the elected officials, but when we need you to come to a meeting or participate, people have to show up, and a lot of times they do not. So we have had instances where I've been advocating for my community. I've spoken several times, in front of the commission, and when I go there, it's just me. Nobody is behind me, and I'm like, come. So you can't just leave it to the elected officials. Yes, you get elected, but it's a community event, a process. We need the people that elect us to stand up with us also. It has to be a two-way street.
Thank you. And so let me ask you, I know there have been two trains of thought regarding district meetings. So my first question was, will you continue to have them? I work with the one commissioner who had the community meeting after the items were on the agenda, and he would tell his residents how he voted on the item. Others would have the district meeting prior to the item being on the agenda, and then would ask for feedback or what their thoughts prior to the item being on the agenda. So my question to you would be, will you continue to have district meetings, and will that meeting be prior to the meeting where the item is on the agenda, or will it be after so you can tell them how you voted? And we will start with Ms. Guthrie.
So I would continue the meetings, yes, because I often attend those meetings. I don't see why you'd have a meeting after you voted. There's nothing to gain. The community doesn't gain anything after you voted. You have to have a meeting to bring the folks in to say, this is what's on the agenda, have a discussion and see where your community stands. We're not a dictatorship. We have to have it prior to the agenda items being voted on. So we have buy-in, or people say, no, we don't want this. It's that's just how it works.
Well, I asked that question too, and just for everyone, his response was, because they elected me to make these decisions, and to tell them when I've made the decision, to tell them what decision was made. And that was the theory behind that process. Dr. Hankerson.
Well, that sounds like toxic masculinity to me. However, I would definitely not make a decision without hearing the voices of the folks in which I'm there to represent. And that requires whatever is being told to me within our communications as far as being the leaders that speak on behalf of a community. That means the other commissioners as well as the mayor. You will get all the details. Not only will you get the details, I'm capable of doing the homework. I can sit down and read 400 pages and pull out the variables and have you to understand that this is what the outcome is going to look like. So it is about being able to sit down and really read and understand true policy and what policy does to a community. Those skills I bring to the table at a very high level. And so I would definitely have my meetings ahead of time with the necessary information so that the community can make good decisions. And sometimes those decisions don't necessarily have to be with you talking to me. We can send out surveys. We can send out all kinds of ways that we can walk and collect the data that we need to have, because I can do that. I'm trained in those areas, both quantitative and qualitatively, to be able to gather the data and present it to you in a way that is understandable so that we began to make good decisions about how it affects our community.
Thank you. And so you've been elected. It is now November 9. So tell us, what are your top 3 priorities, things that you're going to work on? Where are you going to start from? Lots to do, but where will you start from? Let us start with Mrs. DuBose.
Thank you. I just, for the last question, I echo the sentiments. I would engage the community first. But
Oh,
for
I'm
this,
sorry. Did I not ask you?
it's okay.
No, I
I think we're all in
Yeah, I
agreement.
get it.
We were all in agreement. There are so many issues on November 9, but I would want to immediately get started on affordable housing and public safety. Crime has risen in our community, in our districts. I would also want to look at the projects that are happening right now and how I can employ people in our community. For instance, there was a disparity study done in 2020. The city commission, and they did an audit of how many Black vendors were eligible to do business with the city. It was a pool of 18%, but only 4% received the contracts. I would want to employ more people that live in the district. When projects and developers are coming to the community, do you hire locally? Are you paying a livable wage? These are some of the things that you can immediately address by making them accountable and to make sure that the process is followed as it pertains to procurement, as it pertains to our budget, as it pertains to new projects. So those are some immediate things I would need to address as it for housing, affordable housing, the units. There's a great project that's being done, 7 on 7. And of the units, I think there's 300 units, and half of them will be eligible for, that's just 7th Avenue, just south of Sunrise, right next to Partnership for the Homeless. Half of the units are for families that have been impacted by homelessness. The starting rent is $371. That's affordable housing being done in partnership with our local city and local developers and stakeholders. That's something that can be done in real time and duplicated. So we can't always build out, but we can build up. So I think that's one of the first 3 things that I would address.
Okay, Mrs. Guthrie.
The first thing that I would do is have a meeting with the HOA presidents of District 3. That's one of the things that I would do first, because as leaders in the community, they have the ear of the community. So I would want to know, because a lot of times as politicians, you go into office and you have all these grandiose ideas, and your ideas may not be what the residents want. Case in point, the forensic lab. Sometimes what you think the community wants is not what they want. So I'd have to have, my first priority would be to send out some kind of communication to meet with the folks in the community, say, hey, I'm elected, and what are your top priorities? Not my top priorities. What are your top priorities? That's what I do. Secondly, we need to address economic disparities within the community. One side of Fort Lauderdale is looking very grand, you see a lot of economic growth there, but it's not the entire city. So one of the things that I want to do is to make sure that the economic growth that's happening throughout the rest of the district happens also within District 3, because we have not been equally measured when it comes to being at the table, to getting the contracts, like Yvette said. So we have to, step up to the plate to make sure that happens.
Thank you. Dr. Hankerson.
Well, one of the first things I would be looking at is the layers that are associated with the CRA and the 163 plan, because I would need to really want to know the inside on the money, how the money has been used, and how it relates to moving forward in terms of what they're going to do with the money. And just looking at land use issues in general, because I'm afraid that if a lot of what's going on continues, then our Black churches within District 3 are going to be wiped out. And they're going to be wiped out through an apartheid judicial system that has not worked on behalf of the Black folks here in Broward County. So that's one of my greatest concerns, to make sure that we begin to move towards historical preservation and cultural preservation of all of our communities that represents people of color. The second piece is definitely environmental, and that environmental goes right back to land use issues again. I want to be looking at what's going to happen with Dewars and what they're doing with that, what's happening with Wingate, what's happening with the morgue, and any other places that may be on the record that we don't even know about at this time. Maybe some of the people who have been a part of, the club Acquiesce, I just happen never to be a member of any of that. So I will be definitely taking a look at that. And third, I would definitely want to take a look at Black security. While we tend to have a very difficult time about talking about issues that relates to Black people and just being Black, I'm one of them people just Black. And I have no apologies for it at all. And I think that we need to begin to take a look at our Black security, especially at our spaces where we are. While we are quick to react, we are also easy to forget. And I think that we need to begin to look at the policing in Fort Lauderdale and begin looking at early warning systems and be able to make some differences in the lives of the people in terms of our safety.
Thank you. And so there are a number of properties within District 3 where the EPA is required to do checks on the level of toxicity. Do you commit, if elected, to make sure that, number one, to make sure that EPA is checking on these properties, and number two, to share that information with your constituents? And do you agree that it is extremely important that these things happen? We will start with Mrs. Guthrie.
Absolutely. The EPA should be checking any property that would adversely affect the community. So I would most surely work with them to make sure that that happens, and I will bring the community in and keep them abreast of the progress and the properties that are affected.
Okay. Dr. Hankerson.
The Environmental Protection Agency is a huge bureaucratic process, and it requires someone who understands how to navigate bureaucracy. I'm that candidate. I've had the opportunity in working with environmental and energy related situations, as well as the EPA. So in terms of really truly understanding how to sit down at the table and negotiate some of these items that will be very important to the testing process of what happens with our community. I've also was involved in West Africa in soil and water management. So I understand the testing processes and what needs to take place in order to make sure that when information comes to the table, that it is in a way that I can explain it back to the community so that the complexity of what they bring to the table in some of these models, I'm that candidate who's able to take that data and bring it back to you in a way that we began to train and understand what our people need to understand about their environmental safety.
Thank you. And Mrs. DeVos?
I would continue working with the EPA and the local environmentalists as it pertains to any new project. I think we spoke earlier about environmental injustice, and this is one of the steps of trying to provide equity where there hasn't been for decades. So I think it's very important to ensure and reassure the community if a new project is introduced that it will be safe, that they won't be further victimized, and that they will have all the information and the data to glean, do we want to support this project or not, moving forward. So I do think it's important that we continue the process.
Thank you. And so there are a number of properties that are owned by CRA. Many of those will be still owned by CRA, which when it sunsets. How do you think that those properties should be dealt with? And I will tell you, the CRA owns the Eula Johnson House. We are one of the entities that will go into negotiations with the city of Fort Lauderdale once the CRA sunsets. So how do you think the city should deal with properties owned by the CRA once it sunsets? We will start with Mrs. DeVos.
Thank you. Although the CRA is separate, it is still the board members of the CRA are the commissioners and the mayor, right? And so the money for the CRA comes from the increase in taxes of the buildings within the CRA designated area. So technically, the community owns it. The CRA is the steward of it. I think it's important that we take back our community. I think it's important that we reinvest in our community, and we are in the city's commitment with that. And so as it goes from CRA to the enterprise model, I think it's important that that is said over and over again, and that we have processes in place that ensure it can't be taken away. It still belongs to the community. It's a community building. It's a community property. It was obtained by community dollars. So we have to be good stewards over that. And we have to make sure and ensure there's equity there because of the imbalance and inequity of the infrastructure in our community. That's one of the reasons why CRA was created anyway, statewide back in 1969. So it's very important that we continue that process.
Thank you. Dr. Hankerson.
Well, first of all, I want to say that the cultural heritage of the African American community should be preserved. And the money that has already spent, the CRA has just land bank, and that's a part of a gentrification process. And so I think that you shouldn't have to negotiate. That should be a given. This is in 1941, the city of Fort Lauderdale had the Negro Ordinance, and it is Ordinance number 41, and also 48 and 51. And if you go read the coordinates of what is supposed to be the Negro district, the Eula Johnson lay right smack in it, and therefore the money that was paid for by tax people's dollars in order to fund, and money that has been taken away from us should be provided to make sure that we create an economy within our own community that can bring in tourist dollars as well, because the money gets diverted because it goes to the beach and other areas where they think that tourists are there. Well, I'm here to tell you guys that Black sells, and it sells well, but it can't sell if we don't have land to put it on and to have money to make it have that look that we need to have. And some things just need to be blackety black, and it sells. So I'm saying is that as Eula Johnson, who has fought along with other pioneers within our community. The representation must be there. And we have to stop consenting and have some, as I said before, some bergamot royal crown straightening, and make sure that we step on and say what we need to say, bring it to the table, and our share of the land use within District 3 is respected.
Thank you. Ms. Guthrie.
I'm in total agreement. I think all three of us are in agreement with this, that the properties that are owned by the CRA is owned by the people, it's our property, and it should, it should be kept with us and should be preserved and should be maintained. So it's what the two previous candidates said. I agree with them that it's not property to be sold or given away or used in any other way. It should be kept within our community. We should have, they should be preserved, maybe make them historical sites. Eula Johnson's house should, if it's not, it should be a historical site, and, keep it in the community and preserve it so that it's there for all generations to follow.
Thank you. And so we will begin now with the 2-minute closing remarks. We will go in reverse alphabetical order here. So we will go with Dr. Hankerson. 2-minute closing remark, ma'am.
Thank you. And it was my pleasure speaking with all of you today. I have been around Fort Lauderdale for a long time. My family has provided bricks for a lot of places. One, the Elks, other Mount Olive Baptist Church, also First Baptist Church, lived on 6th Avenue Episcopal Church. I'm a part of the Nassau crew that came here. I'm a part of the Georgia crew that also came here. I'm a part of that contract family that came here to pick beans and cottons. I think I rode a couple of bean field buses myself in my day. So I'm just saying is that I'm a part of the fabric here. And whether I win, lose, or draw, I'm still going to be here working on behalf of community. I say that it's time that we have to begin standing up, and we have to speak on behalf, and it is about negotiating a better deal than we've been getting at the table. We have to get our people enthusiastic about coming out and voting and participating, because it's just not happening. When you got 1,350 people and 40,000 people there, that's a problem. It is a problem, and it is a problem. And so I want community to work along with me and making sure that this time we are speaking up and speaking out and not getting bought by downtown interests in terms of spending money. And then we have to tap dance and to the tune of what they're saying without having to be pushed back and fight back for what we're supposed to be having on behalf of our community. It's time. We got to stand up and we have to speak out. And we can't be concerned about 30 pieces of silver. We have to make sure that the next generation that we need to be passing the torch to is prepared to fight this journey as we move forward. Thank you. I'd love to have you vote Nadine Nay Hankerson for District 3. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Guthrie.
Thank you for having me. I'm in this race because when I look across the entire city of Fort Lauderdale, District 3 is like a stepchild. We have to make sure that our district looks like the rest of the district. We have to advocate for the same monies that they get. We have to advocate that we're treated with respect, that the monies that they're spending, which is our taxpayer dollars, just like everyone else, is evenly distributed. District 3 starts down in the Northwest, but it also flows to the Southwest. And we haven't seen, the recent commissioners that have been voted into our district. In the Southwest, we haven't even seen them. The current one, never seen them over here. When we had the flood, no one's here. So we feel, like we're not inclusive. My objective is to bring us all together, make us an inclusive district, and we work together so that we look, we get rid of the blight, we get people, like Nadine said, enthusiastic to be part of the process. One of the things is apathy. We're not as enthusiastic to be part of the process. And we have to change that. And hopefully with my, when I'm elected, we could, get everybody involved and change that. We don't have to have a big old party, spend $500,000 to do that. We could be inclusive with small communities, we get in small meetings, small, meetings like we have now, and get the people, on board. I am running. I am going to be elected. I'm the best candidate for this. I know I've ran, I've been in this race twice before. However, I'm the only candidate here that has been very, very involved with the city, with the boards, with the community, and vote Donna Guthrie on November 8th.
Thank you. And Mrs. DuBose.
Thank you again for this forum. Thank you everyone who put this on and everyone who's watching and online tonight. Like I said, I am a community advocate. Long before I filed my paperwork, I have served our community, the entire community, not just one specific area. I do think it's important that we have someone at City Hall that is an advocate that will speak for all. And my work as an executive, as a small business owner, and as a community advocate, track record is there. And I believe I have the most diverse experience, not just corporate America, not just nonprofit work, also a business owner. It's important that we attract businesses. It's important that we attract jobs to our community. It's important that we also advocate for all voices, even those that are dissenting and didn't necessarily vote for you. I'm a daughter of the district. My mom grew up here in foster care and was one of the inspirations for my advocacy work. I continue the work in addition to my small business. I think it's important that we have someone, like I said, advocating for the entire district. We don't have that right now. We need someone who is a public servant. I'm not a politician. I have been a servant of our community. I want to continue to do that. So I hope I can. I'm honored to have the support of Bruce List, the Broward Black Democratic Caucus, Dolphin Dem, Broward Young Democrats, in addition to some other groups that have endorsed me and feel like I'm the best candidate with the most diverse experience for this opportunity. Please vote for Yvette DuBose for City Commission District 3. Thank you.
And one other question, I don't know, can you give us your website and tell us when the last day it is that folk can give? So how do we contact your campaigns?
October 3rd is the last date that we can receive campaign donations. I'm sorry, November 3rd, not October 3rd, 5 days before the election day. My campaign is my first and last name, Yvette DuBose, YvetteDubose.com. And my contact information is on there.
Mrs. Guthrie.
My campaign website is donnaguthrie.com. And the same stands for me. It's November 3rd is the last day you can donate. Again, it's Donna, DonnaGuthrie.com.
And Dr. Hankerson.
NadineHankerson.com.
Okay, and before we close, I want to, Jasmine Shirley, just give us a quick update. We know that we are through with COVID, but COVID is not through with us. Can you share with us just a few minutes update on COVID in District 3?
COVID indeed is not done with us, and we have to still remain vigilant in our mitigation strategies and what we have to do to protect ourselves and our loved ones. As we all know, the new bivalent vaccine is available. For persons who are eligible to receive that, I urge you to speak with your physician, especially if you have any chronic conditions that may put you at serious risk to severe illness, hospitalization, and or death. Make sure that you're completing your vaccine series and getting your booster. That booster now will more than likely be the bivalent booster, which gives not only the protection for the original viruses that came through, the Delta, the Alpha, the Delta, the Omicron, but also now the B4 and B5 variants of Omicron itself are in this particular variant vaccine. I urge everyone to get the information that they need to still continue to wear your masks, especially when in public. and or inside gatherings where there are crowds of people, or that you cannot physically space yourself accordingly, to wash your hands often and to wear your masks. So those are the three W's, if you will. Wear your mask, wash your hands, watch your distance. I urge everyone to be vigilant with their children, especially those children that are 6 months and older who are now can get their vaccines that have been made available for children, as well as the boosters for those who are 12 to 17 or 12 to 17. And then those who are 18 and above, most definitely the boosters that they need to get as well. There's a lot of vaccine hesitancy out there, but if you want more information, you can always call me. You can go on any of the websites that I can direct you to by calling me at the office of Broward Regional Health Planning Council, which that number is 954-561-9681, extension 1261. Thank you very much. Please call, please ask questions, please act accordingly, and follow the recommendations that are out there for us to protect ourselves, our loved ones, and those that we have no idea what's happening. As we speak, COVID increasing in hospitalizations is definitely there. You may not know that. As we speak, 1 in 4 people are still being hospitalized with severe illnesses because they did not have any vaccine. And they did not move forward with not only getting the vaccine, but assuring that their loved ones and their families did not get the vaccine. We cannot continue with this. We are gearing up now for our flu season. Flu shots are out there as well. Our flu season normally begins about October, the beginning months of October, days of October, through December to February, but it's come early. So there's flu out there. There is still COVID raging still, and there are other preventative measures for other types of infectious diseases that are out there that we do have vaccines for. So I urge people, get your information, follow the guidelines, follow the recommendations, and protect yourself and your family. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Judge. And I'm happy to report that I did receive the newest vaccine on yesterday. And if you all get some more, I'll be up in there and get that one as well. I have a flu shot on deck. I'm going to wait 2 weeks and get that. And what else y'all got? We're going to work on shingles. We're going to work on monkeypox because I'm trying to live out here. I urge you all to do the same. And with that, Minister Edwards, if you will.
Thank you, Madam President. Let us go to the throne of grace. Eternal God and Father, we give thanks for what our eyes have seen and our ears have heard. Now, God, as we prepare to depart from this call, but never from your presence, we pray, eternal God, that you would allow these candidates to run their race with dignity and to serve with integrity. God, we ask now that you would bless each person that is on this call. We pray, God, now your blessings upon the NAACP and all like-minded organizations as we, O Lord, gather about your business of justice. We pray this in the precious name of our Lord Jesus. Amen. Good night, everyone.
Good night. And remember, all candidates were invited. Those of you who are not members of the NAACP, we ask you to join. The only thing that's missing from the struggle is you. This video is say Facebook Live now. It will be on our YouTube page, and it will be distributed to all of our membership and anyone who's on Facebook and or YouTube. And with that, vote and make good choices. Your voting is your superpower. Good afternoon, everybody. Have a good one. Bye-bye.